The following is a presentation of WVUA 23 Sports.
So please give a great Alabama welcome to our new head baseball coach, Brad Bohannon.
That was June 5th of this year. University of Alabama Athletics Director Greg Byrne introduced the 32nd head baseball coach at the University of Alabama, Brad Bohannon. And this evening, it is going to be our pleasure to bring you an in-depth interview with the new coach of the Crimson Tide. I'm WVUA 23 Sports Director Gary Harris, and this is One-on-One with Brad Bohannon. Coach, good to have you with us in the studio.
Thank you, Gary.
Be relaxed because we're going to be here for just a little while. Hey, there's so much ground to cover, and I certainly want to get into the coaching career and what got you to this point, and we will do all that. But I want people to also understand a little bit about Brad Bohannon, the person, your background, how you fell in love with baseball. So let's just start at the beginning. Let's start in Rome, Georgia, where you grew up. I'm pretty familiar with that town, having grown up in northeast Alabama. Northwest Georgia wasn't that far away, been there many times. Talk about your childhood, and like a lot of us, you played baseball as a little boy, but, you know, the growing up phase and then staying in baseball, not just as a child, but, you know, eventually leading you to a career in it. How did all that come about?
Yeah, I grew up in a great family. I had great parents, pretty blue-collar upbringing. My dad worked in a factory, and my mom was a secretary. And when it was football season, football was my favorite sport, and basketball season, basketball was my favorite.
So you were one of those. You played it all.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I figured out pretty early on that I was better at baseball than the others, and ended up sticking with baseball and football through high school, and then went on to play baseball in college.
Yeah, I want to ask you about that because I grew up loving sports too and playing sports, and I had dreams of being a pro athlete like a lot of little boys do. But, you know, as I got into high school, you know, it became clear that that was going to be the extent of my athletic endeavors. For someone that has the talent to play college baseball and then a stint in professional baseball the way you did, when did you know? I mean, did someone tell you? Was it 9th grade, 10th grade? When did you see and others see that, hey, I'm pretty good at this? This is not something that will have to end when I graduate high school.
You know, I don't want to date myself. I'm only 42, but at that point in time, things were different. You know, there was travel ball wasn't as prominent, right, and social media wasn't what it is today. So even at a young age, I was one of the better players on every team that I was on in Rome, Georgia. So it was really my senior year of high school when college coaches started communicating with me that it really sunk in that, wow, I can do this in college.
Yeah, and you get recruited by Division I schools, including Vanderbilt and Georgia Tech, and you're going to wind up playing with both of them, but you signed with Vanderbilt. How did that work out?
It was about April of my senior year of high school. I really got a lot better from my junior year to my senior year, and they just started reaching out and came and watched me play and offered me an opportunity that was a great opportunity, so it was a pretty easy decision for me.
What was your position?
I was a middle infielder.
Okay. You go to Vanderbilt, you're playing in the SEC, and then you wind up going back to your home state to play at Georgia Tech in the SEC. So not only did you play, or in the ACC, not only did you play for two incredible academic universities, you played for two great schools in great baseball conferences. That's pretty remarkable.
You know, it was awesome at how my playing career really prepared me to be a coach, and I didn't realize it at the time. I went to Vanderbilt and played a lot early, probably before I was ready, right, so I had that experience of being overwhelmed as a freshman. Went to Georgia Tech, and I was a role player. There were younger players that were better than me that played ahead of me, and then I finished up at Berry College where I got to play a lot and had a good career. So looking back, you know, I feel like I can really relate to the freshman that plays early, to the role player, and then to the players that are some of the better guys on the team.
Yeah, and as a player, you experienced, as I said, the big-time college baseball. Then you wind back up home at Berry, where it's a much smaller level. So you saw college baseball at really every stop.
I did, and I value each of those experiences, right, and they helped me coaching today.
All right, when you finish up there at Berry College and get your degree, clearly you loved baseball, but you gave something else a shot before really getting your coaching career underway.
Yeah, you know, I had a real job for a year twice.
Yeah.
And I'm so fortunate. I think as a young coach, when you're not making any money, you're moving around like crazy, it's natural to have that thought in the back of your mind of what would it be like to be more financially secure? What would it be like to have your weekends off? And when I was grinding through my early coaching career, I had that experience to fall back on if I knew what was on the other side of the fence.
You wind up, though, going to Wake Forest, getting hired there on a really good staff I think you won an ACC championship while you were there.
We did.
And you get able to get your master's degree. I guess that's when you made the decision, this is what I'm going to do. It
was about the third day of practice when I was a graduate student at Wake that it really resonated with me. This is what I want to do with my life. And in life, things don't go the way that you plan. I finished my graduate degree and I had student loans, and I was on my own, paying my own bills, and the math wasn't working of the coaching jobs that I could get when I finished grad school versus how much I owed. So I had to take a real job again for a year, just out of necessity. That's the way life goes. You roll with it, and caught a huge break getting on at Kentucky, and the rest is history.
All right, you're in the real world. How did that opportunity at Kentucky come about? I assume you're still having feelers out. You're still talking with coaches. How did that opportunity at Kentucky present itself?
It's a pretty unique story. So when I was leaving Wake Forest, I randomly called the Oregon State baseball office on a Saturday morning. Just looked up the number and called.
Why Oregon State?
Because I was moving to Portland for this job with,
there you go.
with Intel doing finance. Was moving to Portland, said, hey, I'll just call out there and see if I can get involved with a summer baseball team or work their camps or whatever. Well, a guy named Gary Henderson was the pitching coach at Oregon State. He answered the phone. Told Gary my story, and he said, hey, when you get out here, look me up, give me a shout. So 3 weeks later, I got out there, I called him, and he said, I'm actually going to be at a game tonight in Portland watching a left-handed pitcher pitch. Why don't you come over to the ballpark? Went over, met him, watched the game, and he and I had a great connection, and over that course of 12 months, I worked all their camps and would go watch games for him and developed a friendship. And then he helped me get in touch with John Cohen when he got a job at Kentucky.
We always hear it's about connections. It's a people business in the coaching profession. That is a great story. All right, we're going to take our first time out. And we've kind of set the stage for Coach Bohannon's coaching career and what has led him here at the University of Alabama. We'll talk about the relationship with Gary Henderson at Kentucky, working for John Cohen, a Tuscaloosa native, by the way, and also Henderson eventually going to Auburn and to the University of Alabama. Our one-on-one, in-depth conversation with Alabama baseball coach Brad Bohannon will continue right after this here on WVUA 23. And welcome back, everyone, to our special one-on-one in-depth conversation with Alabama's 32nd head baseball coach, Brad Bohannon. Well, Coach, when we left it off, we had gone through you growing up in Rome, Georgia, talked about your playing career. You got to make a living. You've got some bills. You're in private business. You're going out to Oregon, to Portland, and you just happened to call Gary Henderson, or happened to call the Oregon State baseball offices. He answered. I guess sometimes things just click. You build a relationship with him, and then he goes to the University of Kentucky to join John Cohen's staff there, and lo and behold, you're in.
That's right. You talk about catching a break. I caught a couple of them, and that was a big one for me.
Let's talk about getting to Lexington. A good program, but a school, let's be honest, known for basketball, and not a lot of great baseball tradition there. In fact, had never won a conference championship when you guys got there. You would change that. But I'm getting the feeling, reading about what went on there with John Cohen and Gary Henderson yourself. The message to you was recruit, recruit, recruit.
We figured out in a hurry that the other teams we were playing had better players than us. The first 2 years there, I think we finished 7-23 in the league and were noticeably behind. And when John hired me, he said, hey, I don't care if you're ever here in Lexington, we need better players, and it's your primary responsibility. And there were a lot of excuses at that point in time, and John was great. He said, hey, nobody cares that it's cold here. Nobody cares what our ballpark is like. We have to go to Baton Rouge next year, and we need to win 2 games. And there's no asterisk in the box score that, hey, they were really competitive with what they have. So I was really thankful looking back that I had to learn how to recruit in a situation like that.
Yeah, you kind of answered my next question, because I'm very curious about when you're a young coach and things are getting – your coaching career is being shaped, to go into a situation like that for a guy like John Cohen, who, as you said, he cut you no slack. He just said, hey, this is what we got to get done. We're not dwelling on 11.7. We're not dwelling on this facility being antiquated, and we're not developing on, snow flurries in March sometimes. We're not focused on any of that. We're focused on getting players. I imagine that's something that has stuck with you your entire career.
There's no doubt. And John, he pushed me really hard, and just like I want to push our players really hard. And the older I get, the more I appreciate what he did for me.
How did you find players? Because I know Kentucky, as I said, is a basketball state. I know there's some high school baseball there, but it's not a state where people go, oh, my goodness, it's great high school amateur baseball in Kentucky. You had to go everywhere, didn't you?
I sure did. And I've over the course of my career, I've signed players from 25 different states and 7 Canadians. I figured out in a hurry that trying to get a kid out of Tampa, Florida to turn down the Gators to come north was not a good use of my time. So I did a lot of times, spent a lot of time going north and going to Chicago, to Pittsburgh, to Canton, Ohio, to Cleveland, to Cincinnati,
right.
Indianapolis. And we were able to sell kids on, hey, come south, but still be close to home.
When it starts coming together, and of course Coach Cohen at that time as a young head coach, Coach Henderson wasn't as well known as he is now. You're a brand new coach, but you start seeing the players coming in, you're watching these guys work with them, and you start to make that improvement. What was that like as a coach? You get to kind of see the fruits of your labor, and it starts coming together, and you're saying, boy, we really can be pretty good.
Yeah, I think 2006, it'll be hard for me to have a more special season than that, because you talk about 2 years of finishing last in the
right.
league and then winning the league.
Yeah, that's incredible.
And you hear people say it can be tougher to win the SEC regular season championship than it is to get to the World Series, because you have to be good for 10 straight weeks, not just get hot for 2 weeks. So doing something for the first time, I think, is special, and I'll never forget that 06 season.
Did you know going in that year, did you have, as a coaching staff, think you had the players there that could win a conference championship after it had never been done in the history of the program?
Honestly, no.
Okay.
And that's what made it so special. We knew we were better, but we didn't know. We knew we were a lot better, but we were comparing our group to the previous year. Didn't know if we were going to be good enough on the mound, and we were able to stay healthy and piece it together. And Gary did a tremendous job with that pitching staff, and we had a great offense.
You're building your reputation as a recruiter, but Coach Cohen, who had played, of course, for Ron Polk at Mississippi State, had ties there. And when Mississippi State was looking for a head coach, he leaves Kentucky and goes to Starkville. Coach Henderson becomes the head coach. Talk to me about, as you got more involved then with the on-the-field coaching and developing your coaching style, not just from a recruiting standpoint, but as a baseball coach.
Yeah, I learned so much from John from a baseball standpoint, in addition to all the intangibles. Mm-hmm. And when John went to Starkville, you know, Gary was the pitching coach, but I was more involved with coaching the position mm-hmm. players. And, you know, I think you learn and you grow when you're responsible, when you have to answer for why you're hitting and running, why you're bunting, why a kid isn't performing. So I really grew as a coach a lot once John left.
You had signed so many players that had gone on to play professional baseball. You'd won a conference championship there. Kentucky was perennially one of the top teams in the conference. But special players are rare, and you got an opportunity to recruit and sign one and coach one in A.J. Reed. In 2014, he wins the Golden Spikes Award. Talk about an individual like that. What makes a player, I guess all you coaches are looking for those kind of guys, but what makes a player truly special?
AJ was very physically talented, but he had all the intangibles, and he was a kid that he just thought he was supposed to win. Mm-hmm. And when I saw him in high school, I knew he was going to be a great pitcher. I thought he had a chance with the bat, and I knew he could do both for us.
Right.
But even after his sophomore year, the pro scouts would ask, where do you like him better? And I probably would have said pitcher at that point in time. He just made such a huge, drastic jump from his sophomore to his mm-hmm. junior year, and really from the fall of his junior year to the spring. I mean, his season was so special. It's one of the best seasons in the history of college baseball. He was our Friday night starter. He won, I think, 9 or 10 games, and he hit 23 or 24 home runs. I was scared to throw him batting practice in the middle of the season. I didn't want to mess him up,
right.
you know. And at that point, we just kind of stayed out of his way and let him do his thing. But he was special.
Yeah, just a phenomenal player. Also, before we leave Kentucky and get on to Auburn and Alabama, while in Lexington, you met your wife, Kim. Tell me that story.
Oh, yeah, it's a little office romance. So Kim worked in the athletic department, and that's probably the only place I could have met someone.
Because you were there all the time,
no
or
doubt,
on the road.
No doubt. But, you know, as I said in my press conference, I got that one right. Kim,
right.
She's awesome. And we were both 35 when we got married, and been married for 6 years, and it's been wonderful.
I guess, too, with her being there in the athletic department, you didn't have to sit her down and explain what it was going to be like. She already had a pretty good idea of how busy you were and what your schedule entailed. I
think that's a huge blessing. The whole time that Kim and I have been together, I've had this job. So she gets my lifestyle, and she's pretty independent. I think if I was home more, maybe it wouldn't work so well.
Something else on Kentucky before we move on. As I said, when you got there, it was tough sledding, 2 really poor seasons before winning the conference championship. What was it like? Of course, when the facilities start to come and fan support and all that, but what was it like when you got there, knowing most of the schools around the conference just kind of rung up Kentucky as a series victory, and then to win a conference championship and to be viewed differently by these other schools and these other coaches? That had to be incredibly rewarding, the respect factor that you earned there in Lexington.
Absolutely. When I was at Kentucky, I thought it was the greatest place on earth. And to me, it was the best place I'd ever been. So, I'm thankful for that. I didn't focus too much on what we didn't have because it was the nicest ballpark I had ever gone to work at. And, there were a lot of great people. And I think no matter what you do in life, it comes down to relationships. And we had great support staff and great kids in the program. And really those relationships are stronger than any brick and mortar.
Stay right there, Coach. And you folks stay with us because I know you've been waiting. When we come back, we're going to get to the present. We'll talk about moving on from Kentucky to Auburn and eventually here to the University of Alabama. Our one-on-one conversation with Alabama baseball coach Brad Bohannon will continue right after this. Welcome back. I'm WVUA 23 Sports Director Gary Harris, joined by Alabama baseball coach Brad Bohannon. All right, we've covered growing up in Rome, Georgia. We've covered your playing career, getting into coaching, and great success at Kentucky. But things change. I mean, you guys are nomads to some degree, and you move on a couple years ago to Auburn with another coach that, all you guys have relationships, Butch Thompson, who has a terrific reputation as a gentleman, somebody you knew well, and talk about that move to Auburn and the couple years you spent there, again, in a rebuilding situation.
Yeah, it was hard to leave Kentucky. 12 years in our world, those are like dog years.
Mm-hmm.
I was so emotionally invested, and sometimes you just get to a point in your life where you just feel like it's time for a new change and a new challenge. And Butch was a friend, more than just a professional acquaintance. And he gave me a call, and it just felt like the right time for that opportunity, and thought career-wise it'd be good for me to go to a new place and show that I could do it at more than just one place. And
you turned it around quick after the first season, kind of learning each other there with your players and a new coaching staff. In year number 2, with just a few games to go, you're battling for an SEC regular season championship. You make it to a regional, and really had an opportunity, came within a hair of getting into the College World Series.
We were a pitch away from winning a regional, and we would have hosted a super regional. And the percentages are pretty high when you play at home in the postseason that you're going to win. So, again, that was really rewarding, coming off such a bad season and then having such a good year right after that.
You're at Auburn, Alabama's in-state arch rival. Alabama's got a first-year head coach. There couldn't be any thought that this job was going to open up, but it did. Give me some insight on how it came about that you became the new head coach here. How did the process unfold?
Well, it happened really fast. I was recruiting out in Colorado at the junior college World Series. Greg called and asked if I could get to Tuscaloosa the next day, and I said, heck yeah, I'll run if I have to. Got to town and interviewed with him, and he moved really fast, thank goodness. I don't think I could have handled it dragging out for a week or two, and it was a really quick and short process.
Yeah, June 1st you're announced, but you still have to do some coaching there at Auburn, and you handled that really, really well. What was that like?
It really wasn't bad. I'm just so thankful that Greg Byrne, Jay Jacobs, Butch Thompson, everybody involved was just A+ and made it go so well. When you're on the field with the kids, I mean, that's what we've done as coaches our whole lives. So when I was in the dugout on the field, it was really easy for me to lock in on those kids and in the moment in the game. And as soon as I got to the hotel, I turned the phone on and went to work for Alabama.
Auburn did have heartbreak against Florida State. I can ask you now, had the Tigers hosted that Super Regional, would you have coached?
Boy, I really had not made a decision, and it would have been a decision for more than just me. But when you're a coach and you're teaching your kids to finish, it's really hard not to finish a season. But with that being said, once you're announced as the head coach then at Alabama, then my primary responsibility is leading this program. So I really wanted to win that game, but there was a part of me, after I had time to digest it, I was relieved that I wasn't going to be in a tough position. So
Monday, June 5th, as we saw here at the top, Greg Byrne introduces you as the 32nd head baseball coach. I imagine in every coach's career, that first head coaching job, particularly when it's at this level, at a school like this, I know there were butterflies. Was it surreal to some degree? I mean, I know you're going through the moment and you're talking, but did it almost feel like an out-of-body experience in some way? it was so fast. I mean, you were digging in at Auburn, trying to build a program there, and the next thing you're being introduced as the head coach at Alabama. What was that?
That is the best way to describe it. And I've heard other coaches say that, and until you go through it, you just can't imagine. But I got off the field at, I think it was 12:30 the night before. 12 hours later, or 8 hours later, I'm on a plane and I'm here doing a press conference. So it did not seem real until the next day when I got to work.
From a coaching standpoint, I do want to ask you this question because, again, I know you coaches know each other. You know the programs in the SEC. Was there any hesitation in regards to Alabama having a head coach that was let go after just 1 year? Did you look at that and say, oh, my goodness, that's really quick trigger? You know, could that happen to me? Did that cause you any moment of pause at all?
Not at all. I mean, it's Alabama. I mean, this place is amazing. And when you're on the outside, you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And Greg Byrne has a tremendous reputation within college athletics and in the baseball world. So, you know, I just had to trust his judgment, and there was no hesitation whatsoever.
Yeah, how big is that he's known as a baseball guy? He hired John Cohen under some criticism at Mississippi State because Ron Polk wanted a guy that had coached with him. They both played for him there at Mississippi State, but he wanted Rafa, who was a current member of his staff. But Byrne went with Cohen. That worked out great. Then he goes to Arizona against Jay Johnson. Instant success there. That's got to make you feel good as a coach to have a guy in that position as your boss.
Absolutely, and it's a huge compliment that he chose me. Our sport is so unique, and I'll be the first one to say, I know here at Alabama we have a tremendous gymnastics program, tremendous softball program. I don't know the inner workings and all the minor details of what goes on in those sports, and to have an administrator that really gets your sport, that's a great resource.
Now the reality, you're taking over a program that you'll be the third head coach in 3 years. This past season won 5 conference games, 19 overall. Not going to be picked very high this coming season. The roster is kind of having to be reworked, and you got a rebuilding job ahead of you again.
Well, I've been there and done that, and the SEC is a tough league to rebuild in, but we got a great place to sell. We got a $43 million ballpark. We've got some good pieces in place here. We've got the Alabama college experience and Alabama football. I'm not going to shy away from the expectations that I have and our coaches have for our program are going to be higher than anyone else has for us.
Didn't waste any time getting the staff going here. Jerry Zulli comes over from Louisiana Tech with experience in the SEC at Missouri, coached at South Alabama, Memphis. Jason Johnson, your pitching coach, comes in from Florida Atlantic. Talk about these two gentlemen.
You know, a week and a half into it, I got those two guys right, and they're tremendous communicators. They're good people, and they've had to do more with less. And I think over my career, what we accomplished at Kentucky was a sign of that, and that's what I think JJ and Z have done in their careers.
The response recruiting so far, how's it been?
It's been awesome, and people are excited, and it's Alabama.
Watching Florida play LSU, I mean, that's got to give you pride being in this conference, but at the same time, it's got to be a little bit bittersweet with Alabama, you know, not having been to Omaha now since 1999, and that's kind of your mandate. Get the Tide back there to the World Series.
That's right. And the good thing is Alabama's done it 5 times before. You know, this school has been to the College World Series. There's no reason we can't do it again. And when that happens, you know, nobody knows, but it can be done here.
4 of those trips were under Jim Wells in the 1990s. Have you had an opportunity to talk with him at all?
I have. Yeah, Coach Wells, tremendous amount of respect. We actually overlapped for a little bit, coached against him for a couple years before he retired, and tremendous reputation. I'm excited to spend some more time with him going forward.
All right, last 15 seconds. What do you think it's going to be like when you put on that uniform for the first time and go out there and coach a game at the University of Alabama?
I'm going to be fired up. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think anybody can see that. You got a lot of enthusiasm. Coach, I appreciate it. I've enjoyed it.
Thank you, Gary.
Brad Bohannon with us here on WVUA 23. Hope you've enjoyed it. I certainly have. For Coach Bohannon, I'm Gary Harris. Have a good evening.